I'm going to call the meeting in order, and I want to welcome all of you that are here today, and particularly my committee members. I remind you that we are being broadcast over the internet. So when you speak, I think this microphone picks up pretty well. Some of the others maybe not as well. So I'm going to ask committee members if you have questions or comments to pull your microphone close and speak loudly so that the public can hear you over the internet. Today we only have one bill before the committee, and that is House Bill 1085. I happen to be the author of it because I was asked by a certain number of people to take a look into it, and really wanted to get it moving in kind of hurry, in a hurry, and I hope that the rest of you will join with me and support this legislation. A number of years back, and I'm going to have Spud come up and tell y'all, tell the committee a little bit more in depth about the triple tail fish. But a few years back, and I can't tell you how many, maybe he'll enlighten us on that. This became, even though people have caught triple tail on the coast for quite some time around buoys and things like that, it became a fish that, and it's kind of unique to the Georgia coast, particularly around the Jekyll Island area. These fish come up top and I guess suspend themselves, float in an effort to attract bait fish under them, creating some shade, and they create bait. Anyhow, they dive and get these bait fish or shrimp or whatever comes up under them, and it has become a popular sports fish with people, particularly in the St. Simons and Jekyll area. I had the opportunity to go this past summer, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I mean, it was a very it's almost like combining hunting and fishing in the same sport. You look for them, and you're able to, do maybe a little bit more socializing than you do when you just reeling, because you can eat a cracker and drink a Coca-Cola while you're fishing, and all at the same time. And so, and it's these fish change colors, and it looks almost like a plate floating up under the water. And they're real. I mean, it's not that easy. It might look easy, it might sound easy, but it's not as easy as it looks. In fact, I had a good friend who's been fishing for him several years, never caught one. But it is unique for Georgia. But he is a little clumsy, I might add that. But and I hope he's not on the internet listening, but because he knows who I'm talking about. But anyhow, to make a long story short, the limit has been 5 on these fish, 5 per person. And there have been several people that's concerned if we leave that limit at the 5 per person limit, that it could very well be depleted. We don't know a lot about them. We don't know why they're unique to the Georgia coast, more so than anywhere else, and particularly that Jekyll Island area. And I think until we learn a little bit more about them, we need to be a little cautious in our laws governing them. 2 per person with a boat, with 3 people in the boat would give you 6 versus 15 or 20 if you had 4 people. And these fish are 5 to 6. The ones we caught were 5. We caught 2 with 5 or 6 pounds, probably closer to 6 pounds apiece. And I was asked by several of the guides down in the coastal area. I asked comment from the department, what their take was on it, and decided that reducing it to the 2 fish limit was probably a good idea. I introduced it so the committee could hear it, help me make that decision. And but before we proceed, I'm going to ask Spud Woodward if he will, and I think y'all all know Spud, so I won't go to introduce him to the audience we have out on the internet. Spud is the Assistant Director for the Coastal Resource Division of the Department of Natural Resources. Spud, it's good to have you with us.
Thank you, Chairman Lane. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. We appreciate the opportunity to come and comment on behalf of the department on this piece of legislation. As Chairman Lane has explained, this is a fish species. Very little is known about it. It has become more and more popular in coastal Georgia in the last decade. Given the fact that it is growing in popularity and that fishermen are specifically targeting what we believe is probably a spawning aggregation of fish, then any reduction in the creel limit would be a proactive conservation action and would be risk averse, which is fully warranted in this situation. The limits that we have currently on triple tail were implemented in 1998, largely at the request of the same group of fishermen that are concerned about it now. They came to the department and said, we have a valuable resource here. We don't know a lot about it. Let's protect it before it gets into a state of decline. And those same individuals have participated in that fishery since that time, seen this popularity increase, and come, back to Chairman Lane and ask us, our professional opinion on it. And we obviousare in support of it. So we appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate you taking this on as a bill, which we think will be very beneficial. And I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Good. Thank you, Spud. Is there any questions from committee members? Representative Spud.
Yes, sir.
Do you think they're breeding in Georgia?
Well, based on what little biological data we have, it appears that that group of fish that we find in the spring off of Jekyll is probably a mating aggregation. You see a lot of evidence of behavior. The fish that we are managing to get some biological data from are reproductively active fish. So they're definitely producing offspring that are using Georgia as a nursery area. Now, the thing that's unique is there's no other place between Cape Canaveral and the northern extent of their range along the East Coast that there's any other congregation of fish like this. So it certainly has importance to us at the state level and probably has a lot of importance at the regional level.
Well, I've never seen one, but they sound exciting, and I hope that we are able to preserve these fish.
Well, thank you. And you've got a fact sheet that I provided to you, and you've also got an impact statement from the department, and that can provide some information, and it has a color illustration of what one looks like. So.
Spud, I didn't tell them a little bit about how you do fish for them, because I know you are pretty accomplished at catching the triple tail.
Thank you for your generosity,
Well,
Chairman.
when I was talking about it,
There was a day when I was a pretty accomplished fisherman. I'm not so sure anymore, but I appreciate the vote of confidence.
Well, I mean that, and I should retract a little bit about what I said about my friend. It's not clumsy, but inexperienced is the word I should have used, I guess. And when I went, I was real clumsy with it too, because you had to be pretty precise about your cast and all. And but explain to them how you do fish for triple.
Well, it is a unique situation. These free swimming triple tail that we have that congregate off of Jekyll, they float on their sides right below the surface of the water. So the first challenge is actually seeing them and knowing what you're seeing. And obviously a good pair of sunglasses is an important tool to have. But it's an interesting situation, because you can show up on the fishing grounds and you go, oh, there's one over there, there's one over there, and there's one over there, and the people in the boat with you are going, what do you see? What are you looking at? They think you're pulling their leg to start off with, and you say, all right, get up on the bow and get ready. And then it becomes a test of the skills of not only the person that's casting to this fish, but also the boat handler. And a good boat handler can make a poor or clumsy caster look good, but a poor boat handler can make a good caster look bad. So they have to work together as a team, and it takes a lot of skill to maneuver the boat, present the bait just the right way so that the fish responds to the bait. And sometimes even with a good presentation, the fish just for whatever reason doesn't take the bait. And then sometimes they're so aggressive that they hit the float, they hit the bait, they hit whatever's in front of them. And if you can think of a brim that weighs 25 pounds and jumps out of the water on 8 or 10 pound test line, I mean, that kind of characterizes this experience. I mean, it's a very unique fishery, and there's only one other sight fishing opportunity we have in coastal Georgia, and that is sight fishing for redfish on the flooded marsh, and that is a whole different type of challenge. But this one is very unique and certainly worth protecting and preserving.
Didn't we have a teenager that almost broke the state record, world record?
Almost broke the world record, set a new state record of 38 pounds and 14 ounces. And a little interesting background, his mother currently holds the women's state record. His uncle and his grandfather previously held the men's record. And he went fishing with his father and mother on Father's Day. Really didn't want to go fishing. and it was his turn on the rod and reel, and he ended up catching a 38-pound, 14-ounce fish and set a new record, which is about 3 pounds off the world record, which was a fish that came from the west coast of Africa. So it put us on the map as big fish territory, and incidentally, the South Carolina state record was broke this year too. So there's some big fish out there.
Well, and that even, you know, when I went, we only saw fish that we thought were like in the 5 to 6 pound range or something like that. But you know, catching 2 fish in even the 15 or 20 pounds is
Right.
feed a lot of people.
Right.
And I know it's hard for y'all to understand what he's talking about, but once you go, and I hope we're all able to go, maybe this coming spring, the part that he talked about holding the boat, you know, you got a tide there, you got wind blowing, whoever's handling that boat's got to keep it in the right position, and then you have to make a perfect cast right past him, you know, like a yard or 2 past him, and slowly reel up to him, and in front of him too. And he will spook easily. That's what, you know, that's the problem, is you get too close or you throw too close, you know, something like that. They are pretty difficult. But any other questions from committee members? If there's no more discussion on it, I don't have anything to say. Spud, we appreciate your
Thank you.
presentation, and you know, I don't see any reason for us to, you know, to hold this in committee if we got a motion, and I recognize Representative Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion that we change the limit from 5 to 2 on the triple tail.
In other words, you make a motion that we pass House Bill.
Yes, absolutely.
I've got a
1085.
motion and a second. We have to pass House Bill 1085 just as it's written. Any discussion at this point? If not, I'll ask the committee to signify your vote by saying aye. All those in favor of House Bill 1085 passage, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. We'll pass out, or report out House Bill 1085 with the details. Thank you very much. The second item that we're going to take up today is a presentation by Mr. Terry West, and I will recognize our distinguished Director of Wildlife Resources Division, Dan Forrester, to make that presentation.
You're mighty kind, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that, and thank you, members, for letting us come before you today. What Terry's going to be talking to you about shortly for the next few minutes is something that is very important to this department, something we're very proud of, and it's going to deal with laying the foundation for understanding our law enforcement efforts. With any kind of law enforcement group, of which we've got a portion of our folks, in addition to our biologists and technicians that do enforce the game laws, fish laws, and natural resource laws of this state. And any enforcement job is a challenge. And they come with long histories. And a couple years ago, we dealt with the legislative body here and some issues that dealt with some past experiences that, quite frankly, no agency would be proud of. And while they may have represented a very small portion of our activities, that in concert with some other changes, namely some change in our leadership at the department and division level, led us to take an inward and an external look at how we view ourselves, how we conduct business, what the public thinks of us, what our core missions are, and where should we focus. And it started kind of a couple years ago when I was assistant director and followed through after I became director. And what Terry's going to present, I think, is going to be very, very exciting. Part of what we found is that the public, by and large, supports our agency at a rate that really is unprecedented with even those agencies that we're compared with across the Southeast. Now, part of this change I have to attribute to the leadership team that we have within Wildlife Resources Division and law enforcement front. We've got a fairly young team, and I brought here today Colonel Terry West, and Terry is an outstanding leader. He's an accountant by profession that followed his heart's ambitions after a brief period of time and is just doing a superb job. He's a high-quality individual that brings great credentials to our outfit, and the interest that I have in being customer service oriented and focusing our efforts on that front, dealing with landowners as well as addressing those issues that are natural resource impacting, is the same goals that Terry has. And Terry brought his support staff as well. We've got two of our assistant chiefs, Lieutenant Colonel Homer Bryson and Jeff Weaver as well. And I wanted to bring them along too so you could see their faces and meet them individually and see what they have to say. And I'm sure you'll learn a lot, and certainly we're going to be open to questions after that. With that, Terry, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Dan, do you mind while you up there introducing Mark to us too, because somebody I hope we might have an opportunity to work with in the future. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you mentioning that. We've also got one other member of the Wildlife Resources Division team here with us today, and it's Mark Whitney. Mark Whitney is in our game management program, and he is an assistant chief in that program. Mark has spent time in several different positions and most recently moved to Social Circle to join our headquarters team. And Mark, too, is a very bright star and a person I've known for a long time personally, and he's a great asset to our team as well.
Thank you, Dan, for the kind words. And Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee, it's an honor to be here before you today. And as Dan mentioned, I want to give you a brief overview of what we've been doing and make you aware of some of our initiatives that we've implemented in our law enforcement unit in Department of Natural Resources, Wildlife Resources Division. And I have been the chief exactly 1 year tomorrow, so this is sort of my State of the Union address. You get two of them today. In our DNR Wildlife Resources Division, we have 222 conservation ranger positions. Those are the guys that wear the uniform like I've got on. They're full-time law enforcement. We try to have one in every county. Unfortunately, we haven't accomplished that right now. But we work all over the state. Also have 80 wildlife technicians. These folks work in our game management section. They're post-certified also. They, of course, are responsible primarily for our state-owned and leased wildlife management areas. And then we have about 11 fisheries technicians that work primarily on our public fishing areas, and they are also post-certified officers. And our officers are responsible for a variety of enforcement activities. Of course, most of them dealing with Title 27 and Title 52, but boating, fishing, checking hunters' license, assisting landowners with trespassers. We also, in the summertime, warm weather, we're blessed in our state with, 500,000 or about 500,000 acres of impounded waters. 100,000 miles of streams, and then we have 100 miles of Atlantic Ocean coastline, which is ours out to 3 miles out. So we have to patrol all of that. It's a lot of water. We also, on the coast, get involved with the commercial fishing industry. We're the ones who patrol and enforce all the commercial fishing, shrimping, crabbing, and any other commercial fishing laws on the coast. Our folks are involved extensively in search and rescue operations because of the equipment we have and the training we have. And, I like to say that the troopers and deputies patrol the highways in the state, and our folks patrol the rest of the state. We're the ones that have the equipment to get into the remote rural areas in the rest of the state. We're also very heavily involved in educational opportunities, hunter education, boating education, kids fishing events, just numerous events. We have an outdoor adventure day in every region that's set up for children. We have individual rangers. I had an article come across my desk this week of one of my rangers that set up a kid squirrel hunt. And it was very successful and got a lot of news coverage. So we do a lot of activities, and our folks are very involved with youngsters and in the education aspect. We're divided into 7 regions throughout the state. The 3 of us, our command staff, work at our headquarters in Social Circle, but that's our 7 regions. Our officers work with no central dispatch. We depend on the GSP and the local sheriff's office to be our radio contact. So they work alone a lot of times, a lot at night. We don't work shifts. They're told to work the best 8 hours depending on the season. So in hunting season, they're expected to work at daylight and go home, then go back and work at dark when the high peak activities. In the summer, they're expected to be on the water. We work weekends. We work every holiday. We work when everybody's playing. Each of those regions has a captain who's a region supervisor, and then within each region are various work units that usually comprise of 4, 5, 6 counties. It'll be a sergeant who's over rangers assigned to those individual counties, and he usually has a span of 4 to 6 rangers that he supervises. So that's sort of how we're set up. As Dan mentioned, it was about 2 years ago that was our awakening event that happened here in the General Assembly, and that was House Bill 1185. And we like to skip through it pretty quick. But what that bill did was of course, those of you that were here, you know, it took aim at our authority to go up on private property and then our authority to stop and board vessels. It was our wake-up call. What we did at that time then, we had, Dan mentioned he was the assistant director, but quickly became the director then as Noel moved on up to commissioner. And I'll give credit, it was Noel and Dan who came up with the idea that we needed to form a review committee and take a good hard look at our internal operations in law enforcement. So they did appoint a committee, and the charge they gave to us on the committee was to evaluate our policies and procedures from top to bottom and develop recommendations to improve the way that we fulfill our mission. The review committee was named. I was a lieutenant colonel at the time, so was Jeff. Homer was a captain on the coast at the time. That's the makeup of our committee, and we held our first meeting on July 14th. And remember, it was the previous January when House Bill 1185 was introduced. We came up with a 2-pronged strategy that we felt like we needed to take. One was to obtain an unbiased assessment of the public's opinions and the public's expectations of what they felt like we ought to be doing in conservation law enforcement in WRD. Second approach was we wanted to identify our priority internal issues, and we wanted to establish some sort of an open and anonymous mechanism for comments, and that had to do with the culture of our agency. We wanted to make sure people were free to speak without fear of retaliation at all. And again, I give Dan and Noel the credit for coming up with how to best do that. We'll talk about this internal process real quickly first. Then Commissioner Holcomb sent a letter out on August the 5th to everyone who's post-certified in WRD, and it solicited their anonymous comments and suggestions. They were instructed to send them directly to Dan. No one has ever read them except Dan. I've never seen them, but he received over 98 different submissions, almost 300 pages from our officers, and it covered the gauntlet of issues that they were concerned with. Dan worked with the LE Review Committee, and together we came up with the 5 most prevalent issues that we felt like needed to be addressed in our agency. First one was the pressure to write tickets. There was, our officers felt, a cultural pressure on them to produce tickets. So we established a subcommittee to address that issue. Second was complaint reporting. By this I mean calls for service is a more appropriate name for it, really. When a citizen calls either our office or even calls one of you and says, I'm having problems with trespassing or whatever issue it may be that gets back to us. The second part of that was complaints on our officers. When we received complaints on our officers, how we tracked them, how we handled it, how we reported them. The third concern was the supervision. The main concerns there were consistency among our folks. They felt like that our supervision at the frontline managers level, which is our sergeants and our Tech 4s, the ones who carry out what we tell them to, the directives, there was a lack of consistency at that level. Hiring and training issues, we had a committee that looked at those issues, especially with the type of person we were targeting for our agency. And then the fifth one was a review of existing policies, regulations, and policies. We asked for volunteers to serve on these committees, and 42, I believe, officers volunteered from across the sections, all post-certified officers. We didn't let them pick which subcommittee they got to work on. We assigned them to the subcommittee we wanted them on. And we gave them very specific instructions and charges on what we wanted them to look at. We gave them a deadline. We met with them in November of 04, and we gave them till March 31 of 05 to present a PowerPoint presentation to us, to the review committee and to the director. And the other instruction we gave them is we don't want to hear about pay, benefits, uniforms, or trucks, because a game warden will talk you to death about those 4 issues. We said we know about those, so tell us about everything else. The work they turned in was phenomenal. It really was. They came back with over 100 specific recommendations, and my commitment to them was that we would answer every one of them. And if we told them no, we had to tell them why. And I have sent out 2 response letters to them in the past year since I took over last February. They did make their presentations to us last March, and so we are trying to respond. The first one we said yes to everything. It was easy to say yes. The second one was the more difficult things that they had asked for. And just to give you an example, our officers feel very strongly they should be able to wear the uniform and working a second job, an off-duty job. That's something that our troopers do, and our officers want to do that. And a lot of my officers are working second jobs now because they feel they really need to make ends meet. We just can't do that because we're not large enough to set up the mechanism to do so. Public safety is able to do it because requests for those second jobs run through the department, through their payroll. The payment comes to the department and is dispersed out into payroll check to the officer. So in effect, the officer is really still working under the purview of the department when he's working that second job. That's why he can wear the state uniform. We just don't have the setup to do that right now. It's just not feasible for us. But that's an example of one of the things they asked for, and we told them we would look at it and consider it, but they had never had it explained to them why we couldn't do it. They thought the colonel could just say, go do it. And so we had to explain to them why. That's just one example. But the last thing these committees did is they set up a meeting 1 year after they made their presentation. And they have a meeting and coming up in this March. We have to go before them again, and they're going to grade us on how well we've done in responding to their recommendations. A new type of management, and it really opened eyes in our department, letting people participate in decisions and make suggestions. Very leery at first on how it would work, but they're starting to open up, and they're seeing results, and that's what's making the difference. On our public opinions and expectations, I'll talk real quickly about this. We contracted with a firm called Responsive Management. They're out of Virginia, and they are probably the leading firm in resource agency surveys. They've done several for our department. They helped us with our deer management plan and the public opinion surveys with it. So we contracted with them to do 2 separate public opinion surveys, and they completed them last year in January. And I wanted to just show you some of I've got 2 full copies here on the desk. It's over 800 pages total, and I've got a copy for the committee. I'm going to leave with Chairman Lane. I'm going to cover some of the high points here, and we haven't even asked them to start cross-referencing our data yet. The review committee worked with this company to come up with the survey questions. Our first survey was of Georgia boaters, and we wanted to know their attitudes and opinions. And I'm quickly just going to hit on very few of these because there's literally hundreds of them. And I can't read that from here. I'm sorry. And that was the one that asked if we had the right number of conservation, too few or too many. And I can't read mine either. But it says that we have too few was the consensus of those surveyed. We asked a series of questions here about their most recent contact with rangers and whether or not they were, this one was fair, where they were treated fairly. And I believe that's 96% felt like we were fair. This one was professional. 96% said we were professional. 95% said, I believe that's courteous. And this one was knowledgeable, 96%. The firm that did the survey said you can't ask for better numbers. He said you'll never improve on those numbers. What we did find out later on in the survey, though, was our core constituents know what we do, and they support us. It's the people that we don't deal with normally. When we asked the general public, for instance, what they thought the primary duties of conservation rangers were, a full 25% of them said they had no idea. A quarter of the general population. And we know that because we're a small agency and we do deal with a very specific core group of folks usually. That question there, we asked them if they thought we should have a ticket quota. And as you can see, they strongly disagreed that DNR rangers should not have a ticket quota. Just examples of, we ask all sorts of questions. Ask about whether or not we had the right amount of authority, because that was one thing that we had heard about, whether or not we had too much or too little authority. And they felt like we had the right amount, the vast majority, 78% it looks like. The other one we did was of residents, anglers, hunters, and landowners. When we say residents, we mean the general population. This survey is the one where we really found out it was the constituents that our core constituents know us, know what we do, and are very supportive. It's mainly the people that don't know what we do that don't have that same level of support. But one of the questions in this survey is we asked if they thought people who violated game and fish laws how often they were caught. And you can see the majority of them said that people are rarely caught, and we agree with that. It's a huge state, and there's not many of us. This question had to do with the following extremely very important. We asked them, what they thought we should be doing. High visibility patrols came out on top of every group. They wanted to see us, especially landowners on the water. They really like seeing us out there in the patrol boats, that high visibility type of patrol. And efforts aimed at past offenders came in number 2. Well, most of you will remember about 3 years ago, it came right before this committee when we passed our Wildlife Violator Compact. And at that time, we were like the 16th state that's in it. Now it's approaching 30. Some of our neighbor states are getting in it. And that is one of the best tools we have aimed at past offenders. If someone gets their license suspended in one of the member states, then they're suspended in every state, just like the driver's license compact. That really hurts sportsmen. I have hunters call me up, and they don't care about the amount of the fine. They say, I'll pay any amount of fine, just please don't take my license, my privilege away. That gets their attention. We ask about, in the last, this was the one on the uniforms, I think. I'm really having trouble reading. It is on the uniforms. We had heard in the past some people thought our uniforms was intimidating. So we asked, and they strongly disagreed that our uniforms are intimidating. We asked them if they thought they were appropriate, and they strongly agreed that they were appropriate. Those are just examples of a few. There's the website for responsive management, and the full reports are available for download on the website. I've just barely touched on some of that survey, and what I wanted to cover with you now is what we've done as a result of our internal review and our public opinion survey. One thing we've done, Jeff Homer and I are very, very aware of the climate now around the state. That's something we'd failed to do in the past, I'll admit that. We keep our finger on the pulse in every region. And I want to touch on some of the other things we're doing. We're implementing a huge cultural change in our agency. And I'll say this, even if this hadn't happened and I had assumed the position I'm in now, I was going to do this anyway. And I have the support of Dan and Noel, and I have this command staff with me, and this is what we're committed to. And and this is what we're teaching our folks at every level. This is our new mantra. We are mission-driven and customer service-oriented. And our folks are really getting tired of hearing us say that because they're hearing it a lot. Landowner relations are now #1 at the top with us. We've told our folks to get out, know your landowners, visit with them, ask them what you can do to help them. Make sure they know you and how to get a hold of you. Formal supervisors training for our frontline managers, sergeants, and our Tech 4s. Those are the people where we kept hearing we lacked consistency, and everyone knows in any type of organization, your frontline manager is the one where you have the breakdown. Those are the ones that used to be a good old boy, and now they're the sergeant. So they've had to step over the line, but now they're supervising their buddies. So they have difficulty. Well, we're giving them some formal training now that's 5 weeks. We just finished the first class that went through it last week at Columbus State University through the Law Enforcement Command College. And we ended up their last week they were there, they got the full dose of DNR. They got us for a week. And they were tired of hearing me last Thursday. But this is going to pay big dividends for us in the future. A de-emphasis on producing cases and warnings. The first subcommittee that I threw up there, the one on the pressure to write tickets, that's what they really looked at hard. There was a feeling within our agency among our officers that if you weren't a top producer of writing tickets and warnings, then you had no chance of being promoted or getting any award. We went back and pulled every promotion board and every award board and generally disproved that. It was less than a quarter of the time that the officer with the most enforcement activity got promoted or got the award. So that sort of disproved that, but there was still a general feeling. And one thing I learned in 2004 is perceptions can be realities. And our folks had a perception that they were under pressure. I wanted to throw that up, and you can't see the top yellow line. This goes back to 94, I believe, through 2005. The top yellow line is our total cases and warnings. We call them violator contacts, and that's where we either write a case or a warning to a person that we have found violating a law. The middle line is the warnings that are issued, and the bottom blue one are the number of tickets that are issued. Well, you can see the tremendous decline since 2004. But the biggest part of the decline has come in the warnings. We're not piling on warnings on people. We're not soft. If they're violators, we have people that leave home with the intent to break our laws and harm our resource, we're not soft on them. That's who we're telling our people to go after. With the rest of our constituents who are sportsmen and boaters who are out there enjoying their very valuable recreational time, we're to assist them in every way we possibly can. Some of our other initiatives is we are definitely broadening the areas of evaluations for our rangers and technicians to include aspects of constituent service and responsiveness. And that's hard for them to buy. It's really hard for our folks to buy that numbers are not it now. But they're gradually seeing that, we're telling them, you better do more. It's not about just producing numbers now. We expect you to be much more well-rounded and involved. We are now implementing a database tracking for calls for service and complaints, compliments on associates, something we never did before. And this is what I mean by keeping our finger on the pulse. Now we'll have this database we can cross-reference. No matter where the complaints come in, if we have a indication that we have a hot spot, then we can address it. We didn't track that before. We really didn't. We may get a few complaints at headquarters and have no idea how many complaints that region supervisor was getting over the same area, which might indicate that you have an officer there that needs some counseling. So we're watching for that by implementing changes such as this database. We implemented a DNR chaplain program, something that came out of our review process that our folks said we needed. And in talking with our director, he feels that we do also. Not long after Dan was director, as a matter of fact, we had one of our fisheries personnel that was killed in an automobile accident. And it's tough when you have to go and talk with the family. And with our officers, we deal with a lot of situations. For instance, drownings or a missing person, and if we're out there searching for a body and the family's there and the family wants updates, and it's just for us to establish this chaplain program, it'll be totally voluntary, and we've already had people that call and want to volunteer to be a part of it. We're going to give them a little bit of training, give them an ID from our department, and make it formal, but it will have a group of chaplains throughout the state that when we have incidents such as drownings or a death notification, that we can call on them to assist us. And generally, we are teaching our officers to be ambassadors for outdoor recreation, for hunting, fishing, boating, and all that our state has to offer, which is a tremendous amount. I wanted to mention our training real quick. We have a basic class going on right now, the 25th in Forsyth, with 23 recruits down there. It's 18 weeks. This week they're doing wilderness first responder training, which also came out of our public opinion survey. That was one of the questions we asked the public, and they felt strongly that because our folks work in the most rural areas, that we ought to at least be trained to provide first responder and first aid in those situations. Used to, we required CPR only, but now it's a week-long wilderness first responder course. But I'd like to invite any of you all. You've got my card. I put my card in your packet there with my personal cell phone number on it. You can call me anytime. But if you'd like to go by and visit and see some of our training while it's going on, we'd love to have you. One word I want to say about our training, and Dan alluded to this, we are in law enforcement. We have to train our people to deal with the worst. And while we are really pushing customer service and constituent relationships, we still have to deal with some bad situations. Meth labs are getting so prevalent now. Our folks are running up on meth labs, operating in one on a boat, on a houseboat, on Lake Oconee, that was churning out just pounds and pounds of meth. We found them on our management areas, on set up mobile in pickup trucks, meth labs, but then we also have to deal with, lots of times I mentioned, our officers will be out alone. They'll be there at night. They know the people they're dealing with are armed. And sometimes we deal with a sportsman who has done nothing wrong, but because of the situation that officer's in, he has to talk to them. You know, he has to give orders. And you know, I get calls at the office all the time from a sportsman who says, "I've never been talked to like that." And he probably hasn't. He's never broke the law in any way before, and he didn't intentionally break a game and fish law. But he might have been in a dark area with a ranger who was by himself, and he might have been very stern in directing him. We teach them that once it's under control, you know, offer your apologies. But wanted to make you all aware of that. We hear, and you will hear from time to time about those situations. We have to train them. Real quickly, I'm going to end up with a few shots here. I have to say I'm so proud of my folks because y'all remember this. It happened just about 5 months ago now when Hurricane Katrina slammed into our Gulf Coast, and we sent 41 officers to New Orleans, Louisiana immediately, and our folks were chomping to go. They were ready to go the next day, and it's amazing what they're willing to do. But 41 of them went out there. They were housed in Baton Rouge, and in a nonprofit women's shelter 91 miles away from New Orleans. But they worked on security, search and rescue, and 12-hour shifts. But I wanted to just show you some of the shots, and we had hundreds and hundreds of them that our fellows brought back. That's the famous convention center that went so bad in the first week when it all happened. And our officers rescued this lady who was sitting in her home, and you could see, almost still see the water lines where the water was up on her legs, and she was just sitting there in the water. But our folks went down there and did a tremendous job, and they're all heroes to me. We sent 21 to Gulfport, and these were our mass fatality team folks. After the, most of it, I know you remember the crematorium incident up in Walker County. When that happened, the state, we realized we needed to train up some people to deal with that situation. So the GBI and DNR got together, and we created a mass fatality recovery unit. It was 40 people, and 21 of them were our folks. And those units went out in 2 shifts to Gulfport, and all they did was retrieve bodies. And it was a tough duty for those folks. But the devastation in the Gulfport and Mississippi area was even much greater than it was even in New Orleans. They took the brunt of the storm there. But it was a great team effort, and I just wanted to pat all of my folks on the back for what they did. But that's it. I just wanted to provide you with that quick update. We're moving in the right direction, I feel, but we want your input. Any suggestions or anything, don't hesitate. Give us a call, and I'll answer any questions.
No, Wes, we appreciate that presentation, and that you answered a lot of questions that all of us have had. Are you doing anything to improve your customer service aspect of law enforcement? And as I forget the number of the bill now, 1185 or whatever it was. We were all very well aware of that and what people were thinking. There were a lot of we had people go to the well and talk about our law enforcement, and we had questions about it ourselves. So we appreciate the update on what y'all are doing to try to provide a better law enforcement image and for the department. I think what you do is a direct reflection on even Spud and Susan and Dan and everybody else, what your folks do out there in the field. And we appreciate the effort that y'all are making, the study that you've made, and I commend you for it. I'll ask I got a couple of questions, but I'm going to ask the committee members if they have any. Representative Knight.
Well, first of all, I as a fellow CPA, I appreciate your passion and what you did, because a lot of times I wish I was out there too, instead of behind a desk, especially this time of year. But I want to congratulate you and your guys. Y'all probably, as far as law enforcement, have a hard time. Like you said, you're trying to be a couple of different things at one time, and ultimately you are law enforcement officials, and you guys have got to uphold the law, but a lot of times you're out there also trying to be a friend. And I tell you what, I appreciate that, and the contact that I've had with all the law enforcement officers has just been outstanding.
Well, thank you.
You guys y'all are first line and ambassadors to the outdoors, and I appreciate it very, very much. One question I want to ask you, though, and help me explain to me. I've dealt with a lot of more of the local police officers and all, and you said about the uniform, and certainly I wish we could pay everybody a lot more, and I know you guys have suffered a lot under the budget. What is the difference? In other words, we see a lot of police officers out there working maybe security, and you guys y'all are law enforcement. I mean, you can do, I assume, pretty much you go through, like you said, the school and everything. What's the difference between, letting you guys go out and security or whatever, sort of make a little extra money on the side than?
It's just a matter of us getting the mechanism set up to allow them to do that, and even the local agencies do the same. If your officer wears the uniform, then the request and the payment has to come through the agency. Otherwise, they're not really representing the agency. We have officers that work with other law enforcement agencies, and they actually wear other uniforms when they do. But that was they just see, and yeah, you're right, local agencies do it, parking at ball games a lot. But the main ones they see are, like our troopers escorting on TV at college football games and things. And, why can't we do that? Well, that's because that's a contractual relationship between the Department of Public Safety and whoever those officers are working for on that day. We could do it, and it's something we've told them we'll look at in the future. It's not something we can do overnight. But yeah, we're looking for every way we can to help them out in that respect. We have more officers working second jobs now than we've ever had, and we get more and more requests, but that's typical throughout law enforcement.
Thank you, and I appreciate what you guys do. I really do.
Thank you.
I just wanted to compliment you and tell you your training is working. I'm not to make my son sound like a renegade or anything. He's been on many boats that were stopped, and he was stopped the other day with a commercial caster who had failed to take his license with him, and he went on and on and on about how courteous and kind the gentleman was who wrote the citation. He said it was deserved.
I like to hear those reports.
By trade, and that's his career, but every chance he has that he's off, he's either on a shrimper's boat or a crabber's boat. So he's dealt with a lot of law enforcement in the past few years, and he came to me and just raved about the courteousness of the gentleman that stopped him.
Good. Well, thank you.
So it's working.
Good.
Hadn't got my microphone turned on. The comments that I wanted to make were about the. You said it's kind of a mentality that some of your rangers thought that the more tickets they wrote, the better they would look at promotion time or whatever. But Dan shared I guess an everyday stop with me, and because I guess all of them have cameras that work out of trucks and all now?
Not all, but
not all of them?
we're getting, most of our boats do now, most of our vessels, yes.
Right, some of your vehicles do.
And some of our vehicles, yes.
Well, this one happened to be out of a vehicle, and even though I couldn't see the transaction, I heard it. And the fact that this guy, in my mind, would be, I thought he did a terrific job in maintaining his poise and being courteous and yes sir and no sir and things like that. So, those are the kind of things I think you look for when you go to promote somebody, how well they represent the department and how well they do the job. And the best I remember, I don't think there was even a citation offered at this one, but he had to, he held his cool better than I would have. Let's put it that way.
I'm familiar, Mr. Chairman. I heard it too.
Yeah, I got you. Something I think would be helpful or beneficial to us, because we want to be more involved, is that if you could get us a list. You said you had 222, I think, rangers or whatever. If not, at least the rangers that are in our district that we serve, or that's our, not like Bullitt County, just the one ranger, 80 acres, or whoever I got.
Right.
But in my whole region, who are the officers that are around me and all?
Sure.
If we could each one of us get a list, and I know I was looking around. I know us four possibly have the same list, but Cicely probably have another one, and David have another.
Yeah.
But could we possibly get that without a whole lot of trouble from you, so we'll know who's in our, in also including your office personnel too?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. We'll do that. We'll include our wildlife techs and fishery technicians also.
Would y'all like that?
Yeah, we'll get that together for you then.
One other quick question, because we all got places to go. It's been a long day now. Hunter education. I just contacted to talk to you about it. I remember. How does somebody my age go about getting a hunter education? I wasn't required to have one, but there are situations where I know certain federal reservations now require you to have one. What's the quickest way to get a hunter education, or to take can you do it by way of internet? Had a representative today asked me, how would I need to take a hunter safety course. how do I do it? Can I do it over the internet?
Absolutely, yes. We do have it. It is available over the internet. One moment. It's been available over the CD-ROM. We've had this for about 3 years. This past year, we made it available over the internet where we didn't even have to mail out this CD to folks anymore. BeASafeHunter.org is the site. And the course is a 8-hour classroom course, so it takes a while to go through the internet portion of it. But what we have done by making it available over the internet is people can work on it at home, especially youngsters with their schedules these days, with soccer and dancing and everything else they had. It was very difficult to them to get to it's typically a 2-night course to pass this Hunter Ed course. So now you can go on the internet, onto this site, and register and go through the course. You have to go all the way through it because you have to print out something at the end that won't let you print it out until you've gone all the way through it. Then you still have to do the proctored exam with us. So we will set up a 1-hour review and exam, and then you're certified. So instead of 8 hours of classroom, we've cut it down to 2 hours essentially for folks to get certified.
It'll take you 2 hours over the internet to go through it?
It'll take you probably 3 or 4 to go through it. You, as a seasoned hunter, could go through it a lot quicker than a youngster who was going through it for the first time. It depends on your experience level. But that's what we have available. And then you go on to our site online to register for courses. Now, we have them all over the state. I know right now, though, we're in our lull period. We sent an email out to our offices yesterday reminding them that, and typically February 1's their trip date for turkey season's around the corner. Get your Hunter Ed courses online scheduled. So they'll be showing up. I did check, and there were none in Bullock County scheduled right now. There will be by the end of the week.
That's good.
There'll be several. There's one available in Savannah too, at the Bass Pro Shop on February 25th. But I think that's a full day, 8-hour course there.
But typically, it just say if you didn't want to do it on the internet and you went to one of your, is that a 2-night thing or is that 8 hours?
It's 8 hours total. We do it on Saturdays in 8 hours, and typically we do them at a Bass Pro or a location like that. If we schedule them during the week, during school, we do them on 2 nights, 3 hours each night. So that made it, we've got a lot of concerns from parents. It's very difficult to get my child there 2 successive nights with everything else going on.
How about a seasoned hunter, though, that's like one of us that maybe have hunted a good bit now? I don't know what you'd teach me, 8 hours. I don't know what
we wouldn't. You could go through the course, and Bob, you could zip right through it.
Okay.
A lot of it would be review for you.
Okay.
It would.
Good. Representative Burns has a.
Yes, and Bob, it is an accreditation issue with the national folks too, that they make us do that. Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I understand you right, Colonel, that a young person can take the exam over there, the classroom part over the internet now and then come in and take the exam?
Yes. It's been very popular. We've got more praise over getting it on the internet. Even when we got it on the CD, we'd have to mail them the CD, and then a lot of people had problems getting it downloaded to whatever computer they were running. But now that it's on the internet, we've just got a lot of praise. It's so much easier.
And where are the tests held? Typically, are they all over the state?
All over the
Certain
state.
times?
When you go onto our site, you even choose the county you want, and then it'll flash up the calendars with the dates that Hunter Ed courses are going to be offered, and they're in different colors.
Okay.
The red ones are the full 8-hour course, and the blue ones are for folks who have taken the internet course that just need the review.
Okay. And that's WRD.org or something, or what is that?
Go Hunt Georgia.
Go Hunt Georgia.
GoHuntGeorgia.com. That will get you to that site. And it has the link into this BeASafeHunter.org site to do it on the internet. So we've made a lot of progress trying to make it more customer friendly for sure. But we still certify around 14,000 to 15,000 youngsters a year. We just want them to buy a license one day now.
You say it's calldan.com.
Call Dan.
I think that's all I had. Anybody, any more questions? Well, Colonel West, we really appreciate the presentation and what you're doing with our law enforcement personnel and trying to make them more customer friendly. We realize you got a job to do, and of course that comes first. I think protecting our wildlife and fisheries resources, but you can do it in a customer friendly way.
Yes, sir, we're going to. We appreciate all the support from every one of you all, and any questions, please just give us a call.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much. If there's no further, does anybody else have anything they need to say? Well, if not,
I'll just say this, I missed some of that, but it looks like you're right on track.
Thank you,
We had some complaints in the past, and hopefully this will try to take care of that.
Yes, sir, thank you.
if there's no further questions, then I'll call the meeting adjourned. Thank you.